Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive straight into the absolute mechanics of true discovery. We're breaking down how we actually interact with, interpret, and ultimately document the natural world right around us. And perhaps more importantly, why the absolute most groundbreaking insights out there, well, they often start with the simplest little actions. We kind of have this habit of thinking science is this exclusive thing that only happens behind locked doors, right? But the truth is, the foundational skills of observation are totally universal, they scale up, and they are incredibly powerful when you use them right. So, to get us started, I want you to think about a pretty provocative question. When you picture a scientist, right on the edge of a massive breakthrough, what would you say is the most powerful tool in their entire toolkit? Most of our minds instantly jump to, multi-million-dollar electron microscopes, or maybe these massive server farms just crunching endless data in some sterile, stark white laboratory. We just assume it's complex algorithms and cutting-edge tech that drives every single major leap forward. While the reality, the most powerful tool, isn't a modern piece of technology at all. It's actually your own eyes. Literally. Historically, the most profound scientific discoveries didn't start in a fancy lab. Nope. They started simply by a person stepping outside, cultivating just an immense amount of patience, and looking really critically at their environment. It's that raw, unfiltered act of human observation that forms the absolute bedrock of all scientific inquiry.
Okay, let's move into Section 1, the art of observation, looking closely at the world. Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, how to observe well, techniques for the field. You see, the absolute best way to learn about living things isn't just sitting back and reading about them. You've got to actually step right into their environment. Professional scientists literally spend a massive chunk of their careers doing nothing more than just watching living organisms carefully. Now, sure, we all observe things every day, but doing it like a pro, that requires some deliberate technique. First off, you gotta be quiet and patient. Wildlife is naturally super elusive, so forcing yourself to be still just allows the whole ecosystem to settle back to its baseline. Second, engage all your senses. Don't just use your eyes, catalog the sounds and the smells too. Third, look closer. Finding those tiny micro-ecosystems on a piece of bark, that usually requires a magnifying glass. And finally, you have to break your tunnel vision. Don't just look straight ahead, scan the canopy, inspect the dirt, flip over some rocks to see what's hiding underneath. Now, while engaging your senses is totally key, there are some very strict limits. We always teach our students this golden rule: never, ever taste anything in nature unless a qualified guide or a field expert explicitly tells you it's safe. For seasoned observers and absolute beginners alike, this is a vital boundary. You want to look, you want to listen and smell to gather the maximum amount of data, but absolutely keep things out of your mouth to mitigate any risk. Honestly, safety protocols are just as critical to good science as the observations themselves. So, how do we elevate this from just, a casual hike in the woods to actual empirical science? Well, the data has to be recorded. Enter the field journal. This is the gold standard in science for capturing notes and sketching nature exactly as it happens. Carrying a notebook isn't just about memory, though, let's be real, human memory is notoriously spotty. The physical act of drawing and writing actually forces your brain to notice structural details and behavioral patterns that your eyes would probably just glaze right over otherwise. It completely transforms passive watching into active, engaged documentation. All right, let's put this into action with Section 3, the Nature Walk mission. Time to go outside. Executing a successful observation mission takes just a little bit of logistical prep. Step 1 is scouting. You need to survey the area for any hazards. Think poison ivy, maybe some uneven terrain or nearby traffic. Step 2, set up a buddy system. Give folks some clipboards. One person can act as the dedicated observer, while the other one writes down the raw data. And finally, establish really strict boundaries, so the whole team knows their exact operational area. A solid benchmark for an exercise like this is, say, 10 minutes of prep, 25 minutes out in the field, and about 5 minutes at the end to debrief. Oh, and if you're dealing with terrible weather, no big deal. Just bring some natural elements indoors and set up controlled observation stations. Out there, during the field mission, the main objective is to isolate 10 distinct items and categorize them. Basically, you log the item, and then you force a taxonomic distinction. You ask, is it living, non-living, or once living? Applying this super simple framework really forces the observer to critically analyze the biological state and the history of literally everything they encounter. It stops you from just going, oh, a leaf, and pushes you to actually consider its life cycle and its current relationship with the entire ecosystem around it.
And that final category of observation, that is where the real science happens. For every living thing you identify, you have to record a specific, observable characteristic of life. So rather than just scribbling down the noun ant, you record the actual behavior. The ant is moving toward food. This little shift is a total game changer. It turns a passive inventory list into active evidence that the organism is responding to its environment. It literally trains your brain to look for biological imperatives instead of just, counting stuff. Moving right along to section 4, Jane Goodall, Master Observer. If we want to see the ultimate power of these simple techniques in action, we just have to look at the incredible, decade-spanning life of Jane Goodall. Born in 1934, she dedicated her entire life to science. But the real pivot point of modern primatology, that happened in 1960. That was the year she arrived in Tanzania, armed with practically nothing but a notebook, some binoculars, and this deep willingness to just watch. She fully immersed herself in the environment, using those exact foundational skills of patience and quiet observation that we've just been talking about. Now, when her fieldwork first began, the rigid scientific consensus was that humans, and humans alone, were capable of creating and using tools. It was literally considered the defining trait of our entire species. But through her meticulous, incredibly quiet observation, Jane completely shattered that paradigm. She actually watched chimpanzees purposefully strip the leaves off twigs to create these highly effective tools just for fishing termites out of mounds. It was this one singular observation, but it entirely redefined the boundary between human and animal. Unbelievable, right? And because she was so quiet, so patient, and completely uncompromising with her field journaling, she literally rewrote our entire understanding of the animal kingdom just by watching and writing. She proved that animals have deep, incredibly complex lives. She showed the world that chimpanzees exhibit distinct personalities, that they process really deep emotions, and they navigate these intensely intricate social hierarchies. What started out as just simple field notes eventually evolved into a mountain of evidence that completely upended centuries of biological assumptions. In her later years, Jane transitioned from a field researcher into a global advocate. She traveled the world to inspire a whole new generation to care for their local ecosystems. Her life's work proved that taking the time to truly observe leads to empathy. And empathy leads to action. Her legacy is really anchored by this one enduring, super empowering message. Every single person can make a difference, and it fundamentally starts with simply paying attention to the world around us. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, this whole framework is now right in your hands. Whether you're guiding a class, facilitating a workshop, or honestly just going for a walk to clear your head, what will you discover in your own backyard when you actually take the time to look? Grab a field journal, step outside, and go see what the natural world is just waiting to reveal to you. Thanks so much for joining me, and happy observing.